to Let's Talk More on Monday. I'm your podcast host, Chloe, and today we are continuing our series on disabilities, inclusion, and intersectionality with a very special guest. I'm joined today by Kayla Long. We are going to get into some very interesting topics that I will let Kayla tell you about. If you are listening to this episode, make sure to head over to our Patreon and save a seat with us, where we're going to dig deeper with Kayla and talk about some of the more intricacies of the things that we'll be covering today. So make sure to head over there and listen to that episode as well. If you do support us on Patreon, you're helping us keep up our internship program. So that means the world to us here at More. But welcome, Kayla. We're so happy to have you here today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Chloe.
Yes, we're so excited to talk to you. So I'm going to have you kind of break down who you are and what you do, how you ended up on our podcast today.
Yes, so my name is Kayla Lenore Long. I am from all over the U.S., but ended up finding home here just north of Indianapolis after I studied at Butler University. I majored in critical communication, media studies, Spanish, and media production, digital media production.
Wow.
Yeah. So I am currently a marketing manager for a global technology not-for-profit, and we work towards the interoperability and adoption of digital twin technology across all industries. But I'm also a pretty busy bee. I own Gem Marketing and Design, so I work with SEO, websites, and design for different industries, different companies. And I also am a semi-pro Latin dancer, so I dance with Alexander Coleman Dance Company, led by Fallon Coleman, such an amazing individual, and also help work with their programming for youth in the Indianapolis area.
Incredible. You were just telling me before we started recording that you had just gotten back from a week-long camp working with some kiddos. That is amazing.
Yes, it was such an amazing experience. The kids have so much energy and just love seeing them be able to move their bodies, get from behind a screen and dance.
Yeah. I need to circle back for a second because you said what your job was and I understood about 10% of it. Could you tell me a little bit about like what you do means?
Yes. So marketing manager, I work with the branding, lead branding strategy, work with webinars. I get to interact with amazing technologists and engineers. I'm never the smartest person in the room. It's always fun learning more things. And I'm just really all hands on deck when it comes to that part of my profession with my company. Again, I do a lot of design, so working very heavily with Adobe products and also SEO, websites, WordPress. We have a few clients on Wix as well. And then if anyone needs anything custom, we work with our vendors to get that put up and have our customers' thoughts and their businesses come to life.
Incredible. Well, if you're listening to that and you're like, hey, that's me, make sure to hit up Kayla. So,
Yes.
Well, that's awesome. So let's get into how we plugged you into our podcast today. You make documentary films.
Yes. So my first documentary was when I was still at Butler. It was called Beyond Me, the experiences of Black women at predominantly white institutions of higher learning. And that was really birthed from being in environments where Black women weren't being listened to. We were having all these experiences, just not even just in the classroom, but in the wider community, not being heard, not being listened to, having to advocate for ourselves, and having to do work that we're not being paid to do. We're there to be students. And although so much has changed, and there are more people that are very invested in marginalized voices and DEI and DIJ missions. that wasn't always the case. So I had this wonderful co-producer, Maddie Nichols, who I have the pleasure of interacting with her next week. We came together, we interviewed a sophomore, junior, and senior at a university and really delved into what their experience is like as a Black woman in this predominantly white space where we're supposed to be learning, but we have all these other things that we're experiencing that's impacting our life.
Yeah, I like what you said that like we have come so far, but there's still ways to go.
Yeah.
And you know, there's not only the roadblock of being Black, but also being a woman, and
Mm-hmm.
you know that you don't realize when you're in a space and you have certain advantages, like how much easier it is and how much more access you have to resources and to asking questions and just an easier learning experience. Have you found that that's true?
Absolutely. And there's being Black and there's being woman. And we interviewed individuals that were Black women and queer, Black woman, queer, and with disabilities, and imagining how all of these layer and build on top of one another.
Yeah.
And if you're not actively trying to listen to those voices, I feel like we need to make space for people to be heard and listened to.
Yeah, that's so important, and you are doing a wonderful thing, truly, making those women that, you know, they're out there, they exist, they deserve to have their voices heard. So it's really great. How did you get into documentary filmmaking?
It was really at Butler. I had the opportunity when I was still in high school. I went down to visit Butler and I stepped into their studios and I fell in love. And I realized a lot of people aren't reading like they used to.
It's true.
And so much is on the screen, and now even after TikTok has blown up. And what is the easiest and most efficient way to get people to understand others and to advocate for others? And that is through media. And for me, that is documentary film.
Yeah. I saw something recently that said that the reason that TVs are becoming so much cheaper is because smartphones are like the number one screen that we view media on now. And that like bent my brain. Because I'm sure that it's true. It's true for me, but it's just weird to think about.
I'm the person that, and I used to watch TV a lot growing up, and now I don't watch TV as much, or I'm watching TV and then I have my phone, my screen in front of me
Right.
at the exact same time. And it's a complete shift in culture. And now everything's short form content. So it's hard keeping individuals engaged.
Right. So you utilize TikTok for this, like the distribution of your documentary?
So I'm working on a new documentary about the experiences of Black women, but in corporate spaces, predominantly white professional spaces, because when I started my career, I realized there's a lot that I didn't know. And a lot of people that look like me historically have not been able to access these spaces. So if there's issues with work, or there's issues with discrimination or experiences of sexism, ageism, colorism, racism, who do you go to in your own life to figure out what to do?
Mm-hmm.
I used to call my parents. My father's profession was very niche, and my mother, though she was a biologist, she decided to stay home. So I'm calling them, and their response is, I don't know what to tell you. Keep your receipts, but I don't understand your job. I don't understand how your life works. And you can definitely reach out in your community, but how do you get the tools when historically you haven't had access to the tools or people that you can ask for
Right.
that support and those resources?
Yeah, it's becoming harder and harder to know where to look, how to find the
Mhm.
resources. But thankfully, I mean, that's what MORE stands for, is making opportunities reachable for everyone. And that is absolutely, sounds like what your mission is as well. So we're taking you in as a friend of MORE. You are helping people know how to access these resources as well. And that is very powerful.
Yes, and through this process, I've been able to meet amazing individuals. I met the founders of the Lotus Club. They are based in Texas, and it is a nonprofit, community driven organization that focuses on Black women in communications.
Mm.
So I'm finding out through wonderful people through Indie Maven, being able to get those connections and see that this experience isn't just me, it's happening on a larger scale with Black women across the nation.
Yeah. So kind of in that vein, and you mentioned it a little bit about, not being heard, not being listened to, but what have you learned during this process about the experience of Black women in these predominantly white spaces for mental health or for disability services or in the workplace? Like it spans a whole world.
I've learned that, and through my own experiences and through talking with others, that you have to do double work sometimes. You may be in positions where you have to do your job, log everything, log the responses, so you are covered if there is an issue, there's a misinterpretation of just tone, or someone asking you to touch your hair in a professional set, to touch your hair in a professional setting. If your hair, I know it's short now, but if your hair is real, and just moving beyond these personal boundaries that should be set in these spaces.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just end there. I have been in I've had experiences where I'm working with notes, get on a call, and I start the call, oh, I think this website needs to be more modern, and the immediate response is, I don't see how we can do that. But then a more senior white man jumps onto the call. We're working from the same notes. This website needs to be more modern. Oh, we can definitely do that. What's the difference? What's the difference here? And it's a cycle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a vicious cycle, and one that doesn't really make any sense. Like, just because of who it's coming from, suddenly it is resonating with you.
Yes, and a lot of people may not be conscious of it because we have all these images and beliefs that are built into our education and into the media that we watch.
Yeah.
Now, some people grow up, and let's just say they go to college and they haven't interacted with people that don't look like them. But how does that affect the person of the global majority on the other end?
And it really is so frustrating that it almost becomes your responsibility to educate them in that moment. Like, it shouldn't fall on you. You should just be able to do your job or get your education or exist in a space. But because they haven't talked to someone that looks like you, or they haven't interacted professionally, all of a sudden it falls on you to make them better.
And you're absolutely right. I'm glad you brought it up. That shouldn't be on the responsibility. It shouldn't be the responsibility of a marginalized individual. And in addition to that, there's also what is called the burden of representation. So let's just say you're the only individual in the room, and people are looking at you as the spokesperson for either your gender or your race, and you have these extra eyes, and you don't want to mess it up for the person that comes behind you. And that's a lot of responsibility for someone to feel like they have to take on, when we're just all trying to do our work and get a paycheck, pay bills, and live life.
Right. Again, another thing that someone else does not ever have to worry about.
Yes. I think everyone has identities, but the way that we experience our identities differ. Mm-hmm. For example, there can be a Black woman who experiences being Black and being a woman, but then there's another individual that experiences issues due to their financial standing and financial background. These are issues that they both keep in mind, but they manifest differently in the world.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about some tools, some resources that people can navigate and that you have identified to help women of color, women with disabilities, women in the queer space thrive in those professional and those mental health spaces. But you're going to head on over to our Patreon to check it out. So if you are listening to this, make sure to head on over there and listen to that. And thank you so much for listening to this episode. Kayla, I'm going to finish up by giving you an opportunity to let people know where they can find you.
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Kayla Long, and you can also reach out to me via email. I love interacting with people from our communities, our global communities. It's Kayla, Kayla, at TheGem,
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about this. And we will see you over on our Patreon. To our listeners, thank you so much for listening. And let's talk more on Monday. Bye.